You know, blueberries are really not that difficult to grow. But that old 4-H motto that says, learn by doing, well, it's true. Anything that you do for long periods of time, you get better at it. Well, Albert and I have been growing blueberries for 40 years. It's a lot of knowledge, a lot of practice. But if you just narrow all that information and all that knowledge down, that if you'll do this, if you'll figure this out, you too can grow some fabulous blueberries.
The first thing you need to do in order to grow blueberries in your area is to know what variety to plant in your area. Now, these are southern highbush here, but within the southern highbush family, there are probably 50 or 60 different varieties. Some are suited for South Georgia. Some are suited for Central Florida, and those that will work in Central Florida may not work well up here because of the chill hour requirements would be different. Probably the second thing you would need to do is to make sure the pH of your soil is correct. Blueberries like an acidic soil. That means the pH needs to be from about 4.6 to 5.2. Whereas field crops like cotton, corn, peanuts, those type things will need a pH of about 6.5. So that's why they do much better on virgin land, because the pH on virgin land is going to be in the 4.6 range.
But how would somebody who doesn't really know blueberries, how would I even know how acid my soil is?
Well, the best thing to do is to take a soil sample of where you plan to plant your berries. Take a soil sample and take it to your local extension office.
Does every county have an extension
Every
office?
county has an extension office, to my knowledge, and they can send it off then to the lab, and the lab will analyze it and tell you what the pH is.
Is there a charge to that?
There is a charge of about $8 per sample, I believe. And if you don't have all the tools in the bags, you can just scoop it up with a little shovel and take it down there and put it in a bag. They'll provide a bag for you when you get there.
What a great thing to do, to find out what your soil needs. Love it.
Another thing that we need to grow, particularly southern highbush, is a lot of mulch in the soil, because they need about a 2% organic matter. And we don't see much mulch here now, but these plants had about 2 semi-loads per acre of pine bark put in these beds. And of course, it's been mixed in the soil now, so it's hard to find pieces of bark, but it's in here.
And you know, another thing blueberries need is water. Water is very important to human life, but it's also important to blueberries.
This you see right here is a drip tape, so that it puts just a little bit of water when we need it. And the way we know, there's several different ways to know when a blueberry plant needs water. Now, a blueberry plant will not wilt like a corn plant will, or a tomato plant or something like that, where the leaves will wilt and it gives a visible indication that it needs water. With a blueberry plant, it will look just like it does now when it's dry, and all of a sudden it'll just collapse and die. And it'll do that in just a matter of days. So the best thing to do is to check your soil. There are meters that you can put out here, and it will read it on your phone and all that kind of thing. But if you don't have all this kind of equipment, you can just take a handful of soil like that, and if it stays in a ball like that, it's moist enough. If it falls apart, then it needs water. It's dry enough that it needs water, and that's a pretty good, just a pretty good indication of when a blueberry plant's needing water.
And blueberries have very shallow roots. They're not like a pecan tree or cedar trees that grow roots deep into the ground. Blueberries stay very shallow, and they have to have water. Your soil has to, what we call, percolate the water. They want the water, but they don't want to stay in water. We say blueberries don't like wet feet. So you got to be sure they're not sitting in water. That's why you'll see in fields, they plant them on these high beds so that the blueberries are not ever just sitting in water, because they can get diseases and rot as well. So water is very important, but it's also something you have to really be careful that it doesn't get too much or it doesn't get enough. You know, I mentioned that blueberry roots are kind of shallow. They don't go deep into the ground. So when you plant a blueberry, you can't plant it really, really deep, can you?
No, it's like a lot of plants. If you go to the nursery and buy a plant, the best thing to do is not to plant it any deeper than what the soil line is in the pot when you buy it.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to have the roots just under the ground. That's deep enough. If you plant it this much of the crown down in the ground, you're going to stifle that plant and it won't grow.
You know, a while ago we mentioned that you plant in the fields, at least you plant them up on a bed. We call this a bed, where you've bedded the dirt up, kind of like just a little mound here. And there's a purpose for that, isn't there?
Yes, and that's for drainage, because a blueberry plant has a very shallow root system, but we also don't want it to be standing in water. And that means that sometimes when it rains, water may stand in these middles, but we want this up high enough that the roots are never in standing water, because it will damage the roots. It will cause them to rot. It will cause disease to get into the root system, which then will destroy the plant.
You know, probably the last and one of the most important aspects of growing blueberries is what we would call patience. It actually takes, once the blueberry plant is planted in the field, it takes 3 years for that plant to grow enough for a farmer to take the time to harvest it. Is that right?
About 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
These have been in the field. These were planted in January of 21, so this is 24, so they're 3 years old. Now, we did get a harvest on them last year, but it was a relatively light harvest. The 3rd year should be a good harvest, but it does take a lot of patience to sit there and wait.
And while you're waiting, you're still having to fertilize and take care of these plants.
Yes, it costs just as much to fertilize and maintain a plant from the time you put it out at a 6-inch seedling, or cutting rather, as it does a mature plant. There's still a lot of materials that you have to put out here to keep it healthy and keep it growing.
You know, we're excited about the crop. It's the first time in about 5 years we haven't had a late frost. So we are excited about these little berries turning blue. And we sure thank you for watching our video, and hope you'll tell all your friends about sweet Georgia blues.